and thanks to the panel for being here. Ms. Korsnick, I was very much liked the executive summary of your testimony, so thank you for that. You mentioned in answer to a previous question that you would allow construction to a point under the American Enrichment Deployment Act. I think I understand what you're saying, but why don't you explain to me how you would select that point?
Yeah, basically you can do site preparation, you can do certain things, but you can't move forward by bringing special nuclear material on site. You can't actually begin enriching without a license. So the stuff that you can do in advance is construction type work, but not any operation or receiving of
It seems
products.
that other witnesses on the panel, Ms. Huff,
I used to work for the Shaw, after I left the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I went to work for the Shaw Group. We built the Urenco facility for enrichment out in New Mexico. Those buildings are relatively straightforward civil construction. It's a pad, it looks a lot like a commercial building. The safety significant issues are really the centrifuges themselves and how they're piped together. So that non-safety significant work can continue. It's not going to have an impact on public health. Obviously, it's done at the risk of the applicant, but I think the common sense reforms included in the legislation make sense.
right, so it seemed to me that Ms. Huff, for example, suggested in her testimony, written testimony, that there could be a problem in bringing pressure on the agency because it had allowed the facility to go forward and then would be in no position to say, stop. And that's an estoppel argument. I'm a lawyer, I know how that works. But forgive me, I have to move on, and but I appreciate.
I would respectfully disagree with that viewpoint.
Well, you're in a position to do so, you're an expert, but since I have
No,
you.
I mean with the viewpoint expressed by my good friend.
Let me
Dr.
shift over to the Crane Clean Energy Center, formerly known as 3 Mile Island. I've read reports regarding the rejuvenation of that facility, but there seemed to be some concern that once it gets up and going, there will be additional unforeseen costs that somehow the public, ratepayers, or the taxpayer would end up paying. Who's in charge of making sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I don't know all the details that entail your question. I would say there's sort of two pieces. The NRC has under its authority the regulation of the reactor and to make sure that before it goes into operation that it is safe. You have an economic regulator potentially in the state that would have authority over how that cost is shifted to ratepayers. And so those are really two different arenas. From an NRC federal standpoint, as an NRC regulator, I mean, ultimately, we were mindful of the costs that we imposed, but we did not reduce our safety mission for that reason. I mean, if it needed to be done for safety purposes, the NRC required it to be implemented. I don't think that's changed.
I'm not sure if that answers the question, but it seemed to me that someone should be looking into the rebuilding of these facilities and the enthusiasm that seems to accompany the initial investment when we need 30 or 40 years to actually pay the thing back, and recognizing that it's an older facility seems to me to be something we should be concerned about, or at least the ratepayer should. I want to go back to Ms. Korsnick for several more questions. I'm looking at your second bullet point. Accelerate new nuclear deployment by, quote, addressing early project cost and schedule risk and thus enabling private sector investment. I don't understand that. Can you explain?
Yeah, I would say it's hard to go first in nuclear. It's hard to have the first of a kind build, and there's additional risk associated with the fact because it hasn't been built yet. And so private investment is taking a look, and they're wanting to have more confidence. And so one of the things that has been proposed, the ARC Act, is to help have a government participate in risk sharing. So you can imagine if you're running a project, the first part is on the owner, then there's a second part after, say, 20%, that there would be some government-private sector risk sharing to a capped limit, after which it would be back all on the owner. So some structure that would send a signal to the private investment that that early mover risk is being reduced, it's being ameliorated. And this isn't for all of them. This is just maybe for the first few of a kind. so that it could demonstrate. Then that private sector money comes in. They see what the cost is, they see what the schedule is, they understand.
Thank you for that clarification.